Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to be talking about Latin imperatives. We're going to look specifically at what exactly an imperative is, how we translate them into English, and of course, how we create these imperatives in Latin. First of all, a little bit of information about imperatives. An imperative is used to make commands. This might be easy to remember if you know that the Latin word impero means to command or to order. In English, we translate this simply using the verb that we want a person to do. We simply say verb. So if you want someone to walk, you say walk. Now there are two types of imperatives in Latin. The first of these are what are called positive imperatives. And a positive imperative is a command to do something. So an example of this would be walk. The other type of imperative is the negative imperative. And as you can probably guess, a negative imperative is a command to not do something. So the example here would be, of course, don't run. We simply say what we don't want somebody to do. Creating imperatives in Latin is nearly as easy. Now, when we create an imperative in Latin, there are a few things we have to take into account. First, we need to know if we're creating a positive or a negative imperative. Additionally, we need to know if this imperative is considered singular or plural. A singular imperative is a command that is given to one person. A plural command is a command that is given to more than one person. This is something we don't take into account in English. Whether we're talking to one person or multiple people, we simply do the exact same thing. In Latin, this will change. Let's look at how to create positive imperatives. If we're creating a singular positive imperative, we have only one step that we have to do. And that is we're going to create the singular positive imperative by removing RE from the second principal part of the verb we're working with. And that is all we have to do to create the singular positive imperative. We'll look at an example of this in just a moment. To create a plural imperative, it is nearly as simple. We start with that same first step. That is, we start by creating the singular imperative. And we're going to do that by removing RE from the second principal part. Now, if we are working with a third conjugation verb, we're going to need to change the E that singular imperative ended with to an I. After we do that, our second step is to add the letters TE to the end of the singular imperative. And once we've added that TE, we will have created a plural positive imperative. And again, we'll look at some examples of this in just a moment. Now, if we want to create a negative imperative, that is, a command to not do something, it is going to be, again, done differently if it's singular or if it is plural. To create a singular negative imperative, we're going to first start by using the Latin word noli. Noli is coming from the Latin word nolo, which means to not want. Noli here is the imperative form of nolo, so it literally means do not want. But when we use it as a negative imperative, it's usually easiest simply to translate it as don't. After that, we're going to add the infinitive of whatever it is we do not want a person to do. And so in English, it is don't, verb, and in Latin, it is noli, and then the infinitive. For the plural negative imperative, it is slightly different in that instead of saying noli, we will start with nolite. You'll notice that the TE appears there just as the positive imperatives end with TE. And so keep in mind that if you see TE, it's plural. If it's on nolite, then it is a plural negative. Once again, we're going to want to translate this as don't. And once again, we're going to finish things up by simply adding the infinitive of whatever it is we do not want a person to do. Let's look at an example. Let's say we wish to use the word amo, meaning to love. Well, if we're creating a positive imperative, meaning we're telling somebody to love someone, which in English we would simply say love. In order to create the positive singular, remember we go to that second principal part, in this case amare, and we remove the re ending. And so our singular positive would be ama, love. To create the plural, we take the singular form that we have just created and we simply add the letters te, amate. This also would translate simply as love, but we know here we're talking to more than just one person. For the negative, keep in mind that in order to do this, it's going to take two words. We're going to first use the word noli, meaning don't, and then the infinitive of the word that we do not wish the person to do. In this case, amare. Noli amare. Don't love. Once again, the plural is going to be very similar. We're simply replacing noli with nolite. The infinitive will still be used. Here we see nolite amare. Don't love. But this time, speaking to more than one individual. Now with this all said, it is important to remember that there are going to be a few exceptions. There are four notable exceptions to these rules. The first of these is the Latin word dico. Dico dicere means say. And so if you're telling somebody to speak or to say something, to create the singular imperative here, we actually remove the entire ere ending from that infinitive, leaving us with dic. For the plural, we once again add te. Duco, ducere, meaning lead, follows in the same pattern. We take off that ere and we are left with duke, and in the plural, ducte. When we come to our next example, it is facio. Facio facere means do or make. When you tell somebody to do something or to make something, you will once again follow that same pattern. Remove the entire ere. Fac and facte. The last exception here may not seem too much as an exception. If you notice, the word here is fero. The infinitive is fere, F-E-R-R-E. This is an irregular verb. And while it may not look like it's irregular when we put it here, it is still considered an irregular form. So if you're telling somebody to bring or to carry something, you will use fer if you're talking to one person, and ferte if you're talking to more than one person. Now that you've looked at this, I hope this gives you confidence that you'll be able to create imperatives in Latin, both positive and negative, and of course, singular and plural. I also hope that this will help you be able to identify Latin imperatives when you see them in a passage, and know how to correctly translate those.